Hello everyone, welcome. Here we're going to talk how to debone salmon. Or no, actually PvP, it was PvP, that's why we're here. Sorry I couldn't resist, but I have been PvPing for a very long time and it has been the most entertaining game mode and something that brings me back to playing World of Warcraft in this current time of 2025. I started long ago, back in 2004 when I was but a fresh-faced druid jumping out of the shadows onto some unsuspecting hunter who would easily cast Scare Beast and soundly defeat me. At which point I would complain that they need a nerf and not skill. Because, you know, it's always easier to complain about other classes needing a nerf. But this video isn't going to be about that. It's not going to be about the fine class tuning that needs to go on or the MMR system as it is, which all does need help. And while I will say the game is in a better balanced situation than it has ever been, some of these things can use some fine tuning, and that's not too much to say. But this is more directed towards new players and people who are just starting, have never PvP before, and jump into a random battleground and basically get their faces stomped on for the first 70 or 80 times, and basically ask them to do that and then come back for the 81st time, so when they're stomped again, it's slightly slower. Because we mix those random battlegrounds with everybody from somebody in full PvE gear who has never seen a gulch of war song to the rank 1 gladiator who, with a mighty breath, can knock over most players with the greatest of ease. Now, what I would love to see for those new players in random battlegrounds, because that's where everybody's going to start, is some, artificial chicanery to slightly smooth those edges of being brand new at the system and giving these players bots to play with and against. Now, we have full game modes dedicated once a week to having a full 15 bot team to do Arathi. Oh, you ever just have one of those moments where your brain absolutely stomps and leaves you for however long? Regardless, it is an entertaining mode, and I'm sure at this point people find it one of the best and easiest ways to farm honor. Why can't we have teams of 50% or even 30% of bots that would join regular players and help those brand new players get confidence and see how the game modes are played and follow these bots into places so they know what they're doing, or whether it be going to get the flag and going as a team, or staying and guarding things in Arathi or the Pandarian one. It's just so many things of giving them easier fights and more fights and letting them learn a bit slower at when they can use their cooldowns and when they can use their defensives, and making for a more rounded thing, and on top of them, giving them those victories and losses in these games when they're just starting out. And as they get better, they can progress to full, player versus player matches. And I don't think that's a tremendously terrible thing to ask of someone who's just starting out, or someone who's not rated or doesn't have any honor gear. And to that end, we could even give them higher buffs of damage bonuses and mitigation bonuses, so they take less damage and produce more damage when they're finally fighting against other players. Even to the point of a 0 point of maybe 1600s are at that 0 point in a random battleground to 1800s and above, seeing their damage reduced and taking more damage from other sources. Because those people who are at the higher ratings are just there to get their socket gear. And to get a full suit of honor gear is about 11,000, and to get all of your sockets once you're past that moment to fill out your conquest gear is 75,000 honor. So those brand new players could get the same sort of honor acquisition as they normally do, and then as the players get higher and higher ranked, or have been around at it and have, let's say, a full set of conquest gear, or have spent all the conquests that they have at the beginning of the seasons, they'll actually get honor bonuses, and they will actually acquire more honor during those fights. So they're brought back into the matches, and they too are there experiencing random battlegrounds as the new players are, and helping them and kind of mixing those all together. The other one too is to remove the Berserker buff and saltwater taffy potions from the game. They give so much damage bonuses that when you're brand new and you have never touched a Warcraft or a PvP, because it is slightly different than, going into dungeons or raids or world content, that the moment you have somebody who literally has a macro down to a potion, their damage bonus cooldown, and then their Berserker buff, and they, let's say hypothetically aim shot somebody for 10 million damage, it's not fun for that person who's just starting. And they will want to quit, and they will not want to play the game with other people if they feel it's such a colossal mountain just to be on par with all of these other folks. The other one, too, is letting these brand new players immediately get into solo shuffle and immediately getting into blitz. The last time Season 2 started, they had not an honor cap, but an item level for honor gear cap of getting into those game modes, which seems so weird to me, because at the end of the day, Warcraft's most entertaining PvP is all of their ranked stuff, because the ranked at least puts you with people your own level and puts you into interesting matches. And the matchmaking on a whole is pretty good. And there are some standouts and some people having great days and some people having bad days, but compared to random battlegrounds or epic battlegrounds, all blitz and solo shuffles are much closer in a skill gap between the highest and lowest player. Now, with that skill gap, it's completely unable to be experienced by those lower level people who don't have the gear, are just starting out, or have older gear and want to try these things. And I don't think starting them at a lower rank than perhaps what they might have got at one point, or if they're brand new, they have no rank, and starting them in the 1400s, I don't think is a crazy thing, and letting them try solo shuffle and being bad and learning it. And everybody's bad, and they're all learning it, and they're all trying their best to be better with absolutely on par abilities, and no kind of chicanery going on, because all of the suggestions that I had for making them stronger or weaker is purely for random battlegrounds. All solo shuffles and battleground blitz, everything should be equal, and it is the skill and ability of the players that I think at those points needs to change. I think also, too, making blitz a permanent game mode that people can get together in a team of 8 to queue for would kind of be way more amazing than the 10v10 that they currently have. It's just a better, more entertaining game mode that also feels far more balanced than the 10v10s. And I think there's a lot of people who would kind of love to see that with the increased speed as well, because, some of those Warsong Gulches could be real slow, even with the time limits on them. Having the blitz with the extra mount speed and the shorter matches is just a far, far better way of doing things, and making that a standard game match that people could be a team for and queue as a team for, I think would be really entertaining. And now I'm not saying replace the current blitz. I'm saying having them both, that you would have an 8v8 and a battleground blitz for all of the different flavors of Warcraft that people absolutely could play and love. Now, one thing that shocked me that they did something about was the epic battleground group queuing. Now, for those of you not in the know, what was happening was people were using third-party witchcraft to have a bunch of people queue for a single Epic Battleground at the same time on a specific level, and then all together in that queuing, they'd be able to get into Epic Battlegrounds with teams of 20, 30, or 35, or even 40, all on Discord, working together as a singular unit, when at default, Epic Battlegrounds only want people to queue at a 5-person max. And as I said, Blizzard started doing something about it. They started slapping these people on the wrist and telling them, hey, stop that. Something else that I think needs to go on with Epic Battlegrounds are the people deserting immediately into the match. And what would happen is, at the beginning of every single Epic Battleground, you would have everybody rush together, and then they would fight, and then one side would lose. And then the moment that side lost, you would see 20 to 30 people immediately AFK out of the match. And the match was lost. Which it isn't. You can always come back from those, and you could always win those. But the moment you lose the majority of your team, and then you have to fight 10 on 40 for a short amount of time, or even worse in Wintergrass, even once you get all those people back, they don't have any kills, so they can't purchase any machines, so they're that far back already. And it's always a winnable match, and they can always come back and, clutch victory from the other side, even with that initial loss. But it's so normalized and easy for them to do that they experience no penalties. They get out, they jump on another character for the deserter buff, and then they come back, and then they go back to grinding their honor. And it would just be so nice to have them suffer those penalties, and maybe 3 days of them being unable to queue for PvP or all random battlegrounds. I think would at least help greatly in those sort of matches, that they wouldn't feel like it was so easy to do and such a nothing to collect their honor. Other things that would help greatly would be also adding a cooldown to all crowd control. Now, crazy, I know. But being able to spam stuff like Polymorph, Fear, Cyclone, Cheap Shot, I think really harms some of these matches. And you can have people sit there and just work to take one person out of the game and have it come so close to each other that they can't even react to it. And just a 7-second cooldown on all crowd controls, or an internal cooldown on crowd controls themselves, I think would go a long way to at least allowing a person to pummel that next sheep, or drop a tremor totem for that next fear. That they would at least be able to react and respond to it, even with just a 1-second breath of what's coming along. And also, when you're a brand new player, not have that moment of where you feel like you can't do nothing for long swaths of the game, only to have everybody else die and then them all focus on you and absolutely slaughtering you. It's just one of those things that kind of happens quite frequently, and taking control away from a player for really long periods of time, which if someone's focusing on it, they can keep a player out of the game for 10 or 11 seconds at a time, which is an eternity within any sort of PvP matches, especially something like Solo Shuffle, where a healer could be absolutely admonished for so long that they can't even do nothing or be able to hide from it. Oh, all of the talking. So, something, and that isn't just for brand new players. I think older players would appreciate that too. But the other big one that I think would mean everything to everybody, all of the time, everywhere, is a rework of their buff system. Now, I'm not saying, hey, we need to axe all of these buffs, but just a system on the UI to have a primary and a tertiary buff. Now, what I mean by that is, oh, I'm a shaman. Ascendance, that's a primary buff. Flurry, that's tertiary. And every single class has something like that, where it's a very minimal increase of damage or weapon speed or casting speed that is meaningless to everybody, even the player themselves, because they don't do anything different when that buff comes up to when they're normally acting. They just operate, and then that buff sometimes comes up and they sometimes have a bonus. And those to me are secondary buffs. And just to have a UI system that allows you to focus on primary buffs alone and hide the tertiary and secondary buffs, I think would go so long, both defensively and offensively. And to that I mean, like, hamstring, I don't think is exactly a primary buff. You have it on you, you're walking slow, you know these things. You don't really need a buff in the top right-hand corner, debuff in the top right-hand of your corner to let you know this. Colossal Smash, on the other hand, even though it does come with an animation, I think is a slightly more important one. Or to see that warrior get avatar and know, hey, it's time to flee, because they're going to smash you, or icy veins, and it's best to get around a pillar and, weep profusely as you rock back and forth. Not knowing when this is happening because there's just this glut of buffs and debuffs on everybody all the time, and not just on yourself, but to have it in your targeting frame would mean so much and clean things up. And in PvE content as well, to have it cleaned up immensely, that you just have your big buffs, because at the moment, I almost hide my buffs because they're so meaningless to me. And all I need is to know 1 or 2 buffs while they're going on, and I can't track it in my buff frame. Now, one of the later ones that I think comes with both players and the game are endorsements. Now, I know it's a crazy thing. Where has Blizzard ever used endorsements before? But I think giving people the agency and the power to reward good gameplay and positive gameplay would mean a lot. And you can even go further to actively attracting people to being more positive and supportive within those battlegrounds by giving them gold and conquest and honor for being endorsed, by saying it's a good game, or somebody else did a good job, or that you did a great job healing. And healing is one of those ultimate cases of where there are so many amazing healers doing such a wonderful job keeping everybody alive, but you don't get the chance to reward them or to thank them for that, because the matches go so quick in a solo shuffle, or by the time you're done in a battleground blitz, you're out of it and you'll never see this person again, or they never said anything that you could message them afterwards. To have a little endorsement window that pops open with some of the players that you've played with and give you a chance to send messages to them afterwards and then endorse them and say, hey, you did an amazing job, or thank you for that. Currently, right now, I personally do message people after solo shuffles, because 9 times out of 10, they either did an amazing job and won the match for me, or 2, they did such an amazing job at stomping me in the face that I kind of need their help to know how to stop that. And if anyone ever wants to get better in solo shuffle, do that. Message people and say, hey, great job. How do I fight you? And 9 times out of 10, I shouldn't even say that, 99 times out of 100, they will always happily talk to you and give you advice and point you in the right direction of what you can do to be better, whether it is using specific attacks against them, or waiting for certain abilities that you then stop from being cast, or spell reflecting, interrupting, toteming them down. It's a myriad of things that you can do better yourself, and people can help you in the right direction of knowing what's going to make your life better. And then you being able to endorse that person for playing well and being positive, I think would go a long way and help reinforce that. At the current moment, Warcraft kind of only reinforces the negative aspects, and people sending each other nasty messages about what sort of intercourse they had with their mothers the night before and how terrible they are and that they need to delete their characters. And it's just not fair to the people who are just learning and playing the game currently. And I think giving them a tool that allows them to be positive, and even if it's just a mage or a healer who is seeing themselves get a bunch of endorsements after a solo shuffle or a battleground blitz for the amazing work that they did, I think would at least remind them and let them know that there are people who notice what they're doing and making the game a better place for everybody. And I know it sounds crazy and like a very let's hold each other's hands and sing happy songs, but it's true. And I think a lot of it is going around, and everybody at their core wants to win and do the best they can. And sometimes they have bad days. Sometimes they just need help in certain matchups. And sometimes just saying a nice thing to them. One of the best moments I ever had in a solo shuffle was where I lost 1-5. But the one win I got was with a very supportive mage who said, fantastic job. And I had to message them afterwards about thanking them for being supportive and nice versus, crapping squarely on top of my head while pissing down my face because I missed a cooldown at any sort of moment. I think it would just mean so much to import those endorsements into Warcraft and reinforce positivity throughout the game. And it's something that we can all do for each other, not just an actionable thing by Blizzard, but that you can actually talk to those people, especially if you need help with something. If a mage is absolutely getting you or a devastation evoker is dancing around, talk to them. And they will give you absolutely wonderful advice of what you can do and what works against them. Because sometimes you don't know the exact spell layout of what will work for them, but they will know what has happened to themselves and what works and what doesn't. But, that's mostly what I had that I wished to talk about and was hoping everybody would have an entertaining go about it as well. So I'm going to hit the old dusty trail. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can leave it down in the little section below. And yeah, thank you so much. Until next time, everyone.